When we think about success, we often imagine as a straight line, a smooth path where effort automatically leads to results. But the truth is, progress isn't linear. It's full of hidden pitfalls, subtle traps that can slow us down, divert us, or even stop us entirely. The challenge isn't just working harder, it's recognizing the behaviors and mindsets that quietly undermine our growth. Today, I want to talk about 5 traps that kill progress and how you can avoid them. The first trap is chasing approval instead of purpose. Many people work tirelessly to please others, bosses, peers, family, even strangers online. They measure their worth through likes, compliments, or promotions rather than their own internal compass. The moment we let external validation define us, we lose focus on what truly matters. Purpose-driven action creates momentum because it fuels intrinsic motivation. Approval may feel good temporarily, but purpose sustains long-term progress. Ask yourself daily, are my choices aligned with my values, or am I just trying to impress someone else? The second trap is avoiding failure at all costs. Failure isn't the enemy, it's a teacher. Yet so many shy away from it, fearing judgment, embarrassment, or loss. The cost of avoiding failure is far higher than the discomfort of experiencing it. Each setback is a lesson, each misstep an opportunity to learn faster than success alone ever could. Progress demands courage, the courage to fail, analyze, and adapt. The mindset of experimentation turns obstacles into stepping stones rather than roadblocks. The third trap is overcomplicating the process. We often believe that success comes from complex strategies, intricate plans, or perfect timing. But progress thrives in clarity and simplicity. Complexity creates hesitation, procrastination, and confusion. The most effective actions are often the simplest ones executed consistently. Focus on the core steps that move the needle, strip away distractions, and resist the temptation to over-engineer. Progress is built on consistent, purposeful action, not perfection. The fourth trap is comparing yourself to others. Social media and competitive environments make it easy to measure your journey against someone else's highlight reel. The danger is that comparison steals energy, creates self-doubt, and shifts focus away from your unique path. Growth happens when you focus on your own trajectory, celebrate your milestones, and learn from others without letting their success define your worth. Remember, someone else's journey isn't your blueprint. It's inspiration, not instruction. The fifth and final trap is neglecting the power of patience. We live in an instant gratification world where results are expected quickly and momentum is measured in days rather than months or years. Progress, real progress, takes time. It's cultivated through small, repeated actions, compounded effort, and unwavering persistence. Impatience breeds shortcuts, poor decisions, and burnout. Patience doesn't mean passivity. It means committing to the process, trusting that consistent effort will yield results over time. Avoiding these traps isn't easy. It requires awareness, discipline, and the willingness to reflect on your habits. But if you can steer clear of these 5 dangers, seeking approval over purpose, fearing failure, overcomplicating, comparing yourself, and neglecting patience, you unlock the freedom to progress intentionally, consistently, and meaningfully. The path to success isn't about luck. It's about avoiding the traps that quietly hold us back and choosing to move forward with clarity, courage, and conviction. 5 keynotes of the speech: chasing approval instead of purpose, avoiding failure at all costs. Overcomplicating the process, comparing yourself to others, neglecting the power of patience, and chasing approval instead of purpose is one of the most common traps that quietly erodes progress. Yet it's rarely recognized until the damage is already done. From the moment we begin our personal or professional journeys, we are bombarded with messages about what we should do, how we should behave, and who we should impress. Society, social media, colleagues, friends, and even family all contribute to shaping our decisions through subtle pressures and expectations. Over time, this creates a mindset where our actions are motivated less by internal values and more by the desire for external validation. We start asking not what we truly want or what aligns with our principles, but what others will think, how others will judge us, and whether our efforts will be noticed or praised. The danger in this is profound because seeking approval is inherently reactive. It shifts the focus outward and away from our own direction, which slows momentum and keeps us trapped in cycles of comparison, insecurity, and indecision. When we operate from a place of seeking approval, every choice becomes a balancing act between what we want to achieve and how it will be perceived. This constant mental negotiation consumes energy, distracts from meaningful goals, and reduces clarity. Decisions become fragmented, and commitment to one path diminishes because there is always the temptation to change course to satisfy someone else's expectations. Progress is never linear when your primary measure of success depends on external opinions, because the standards of those around you are often inconsistent, contradictory, or entirely irrelevant to your own mission. One of the reasons chasing approval is so damaging is that it fosters a sense of dependency on feedback loops. Every accomplishment feels incomplete unless acknowledged. Every effort feels inadequate unless praised. This creates a fragile foundation for growth, where self-worth fluctuates with the attention or approval we receive. A single criticism can derail motivation, and even positive feedback becomes a temporary high rather than a sustainable source of drive. Over time, people who prioritize approval over purpose may find themselves questioning why they are working so hard, why their energy feels scattered, or why their satisfaction with life is fleeting. This is not a question of effort or talent. It is a question of alignment. Purpose provides a compass that is consistent, reliable, and internally defined. It is the internal reason for doing the work, the motivating force that exists independent of applause or recognition. Purpose gives meaning to small, often invisible actions that might otherwise feel unremarkable. It allows progress to accumulate steadily because the motivation is intrinsic, not contingent on fluctuating external judgment. Developing a purpose-driven mindset requires deliberate reflection and honesty. It demands that you ask yourself, why am I doing this? Who am I doing it for? Will this action move me closer to my long-term goals, or am I simply seeking approval? Purpose is not about rejecting feedback or ignoring others. It is about prioritizing your internal values and letting external recognition become a byproduct rather than the goal. When purpose becomes the guiding force, decisions are clearer, energy is more focused, and resilience increases because setbacks or criticisms no longer shake the foundation of why you are on your path. People who operate from purpose are able to withstand challenges, make bold choices, and continue growing even in the absence of applause because the reward is embedded in the work itself. Chasing approval may feel safe in the short term, but it is a trap that diminishes autonomy, dilutes focus, and stifles true progress. To break free, it is essential to identify where approval-seeking behaviors are influencing your actions, to consciously redirect your energy toward purpose-driven choices, and to accept that internal validation is more sustainable than external validation. Progress built on purpose is not only faster and more meaningful, it is enduring, resilient, and deeply fulfilling. Avoiding failure at all costs is one of the most subtle traps that prevents people from making meaningful progress. From a young age, we are conditioned to associate failure with shame, embarrassment, or inadequacy. School systems reward correct answers, workplaces celebrate flawless execution, and social media highlights only the successes of others. This cultural conditioning creates an illusion that success is a straight path without missteps, when in reality, progress and failure are inseparably linked. The fear of failure can be paralyzing because it triggers an instinctive desire to avoid discomfort. We start overanalyzing every decision, delaying actions indefinitely, and only taking steps that feel safe. This risk-averse mindset may offer short-term security, but it comes at the cost of long-term growth. Avoiding failure often leads to stagnation. When we refuse to experiment, we limit our experiences to what is already familiar, safe, or approved. Innovation, creativity, and breakthrough results almost always emerge from trying something new and being willing to fall along the way. Every failure contains invaluable feedback if we are open to receiving it. Each misstep shows us what doesn't work, highlights gaps in our knowledge, and challenges us to adapt. Yet when fear dominates, we interpret failure as a reflection of our identity rather than a natural part of the learning process. This misperception is what stops so many from taking decisive action, from starting that project, pursuing that idea, or asking the questions that could lead to growth. To embrace progress, it is essential to reframe failure not as a verdict on competence, but as information, insight, and opportunity. When we shift our perspective, the stakes change. Failure is no longer a reason to retreat. It becomes a signal that we are pushing boundaries and engaging fully with challenges that matter. Courage becomes the currency of progress. The more willing we are to experience failure, the more confident we become in our capacity to handle adversity. People who embrace failure understand that success is rarely immediate or effortless. They recognize that missteps are not detours but integral components of the journey. Every great accomplishment, from scientific breakthroughs to business innovations, carries a history of experiments that didn't work. The difference between those who succeed and those who stagnate is not an absence of failure, but the ability to persist, learn, and iterate. Avoiding failure also fosters a false sense of control. We begin to believe that if we carefully plan, hedge our bets, or choose only the safe paths, we can guarantee success. In reality, life is unpredictable and certainty is a myth. Attempts to avoid failure entirely often result in missed opportunities, underdeveloped skills, and a life constrained by fear rather than guided by purpose. To cultivate a mindset that thrives despite failure, it is important to take deliberate risks, accept that mistakes are inevitable, and analyze every outcome for lessons. Small failures, when processed consciously, build resilience and sharpen judgment. Over time, the fear of failure diminishes because experience teaches us that mistakes are rarely fatal and often more instructive than success itself. Avoiding failure is not about recklessness or ignoring consequences. It is about acknowledging that discomfort and mistakes are necessary for growth. Progress demands action in uncertainty and learning from results, whether they are positive or negative. The path to mastery, leadership, and personal achievement is paved with repeated attempts, refinements, and failures that, when embraced, accelerate learning and deepen understanding. By shifting our mindset from fearing failure to valuing it as an essential guide, we unlock the ability to take bold steps, innovate consistently, and approach challenges with curiosity rather than hesitation. In this way, the courage to fail becomes a powerful driver of progress, enabling us to move forward with confidence, adapt to change, and achieve results that would otherwise remain out of reach. Overcomplicating the process is a trap that quietly slows progress, often without us even realizing it. We live in a world where complexity is frequently mistaken for intelligence or skill. The assumption is that the more elaborate the plan, the more likely it is to succeed. We pile on steps, strategies, and contingencies, believing that meticulous planning guarantees results. Yet the truth is often the opposite. Overcomplication creates confusion, delays action, and drains energy that could otherwise be spent on consistent, focused effort. When we add layers of unnecessary steps, the path forward becomes harder to navigate. Decisions take longer, small wins are delayed, and momentum is lost. The human brain thrives on clarity. Simplicity allows us to act decisively and maintain focus on the key actions that truly drive progress. The more we complicate, the more we give ourselves excuses to procrastinate, to hesitate, and to question whether we are doing enough or the right thing. One of the reasons this trap is so seductive is that overcomplicating feels productive. When we create elaborate plans, checklists, or systems, we convince ourselves that we are moving forward. There is a sense of comfort in business, in planning, and strategizing endlessly. But in reality, complexity often becomes a barrier between intention and execution. Simplicity, on the other hand, forces clarity and discipline. It requires us to identify what truly matters, what actions have the most significant impact, and what steps are unnecessary distractions. Focusing on the essential elements allows progress to accumulate steadily. It is the repeated execution of simple, high-impact actions that creates compounding results, not an endless series of convoluted strategies. Overcomplication also breeds mental fatigue. The more choices and steps we create for ourselves, the more cognitive load we carry. Each decision requires energy, and when energy is depleted, motivation wanes, and the likelihood of follow-through diminishes. Simplicity reduces friction and preserves mental resources, allowing us to act consistently over time. It also encourages experimentation and adaptation. When the process is simple, it is easier to identify what works and what doesn't. We can iterate, adjust, and improve without being trapped in a complex system that makes change cumbersome. Overcomplication creates rigidity, while simplicity allows agility. Another reason overcomplicating stifles progress is that it fosters a focus on perfection rather than action. We often delay implementation because our plan isn't detailed enough, our resources aren't perfectly aligned, or our timing isn't ideal. In truth, perfection is rarely attainable, and waiting for it only postpones growth. Action, executed consistently and adjusted along the way, produces far better results than endless preparation. Simplicity brings attention back to execution. It reminds us that progress is built on doing, not on planning alone. People who master simplicity understand that success is rarely the result of intricate strategies or grand designs. It is the outcome of focused, repeated, and disciplined actions that address the most critical aspects of a goal. By stripping away unnecessary complexity, we free ourselves to act decisively, maintain momentum, and observe results more clearly. The ability to identify what is essential and to eliminate what is not is a hallmark of progress-driven thinking. It requires awareness, courage, and the willingness to let go of strategies that feel elaborate but don't contribute meaningfully to the outcome. Overcomplication is a seductive trap because it gives the illusion of control, but simplicity delivers results because it channels energy toward what truly matters. Progress accelerates when we focus on clarity, decisive action, and the disciplined execution of simple, high-impact steps. By embracing simplicity, we not only reduce mental friction and stress, but we also create a system where action is consistent, learning is faster, and results compound over time. Comparing yourself to others is a trap that silently undermines progress, and it is more common than most people realize. From social media feeds to professional environments, we are constantly exposed to the accomplishments, successes, and milestones of those around us. The danger lies in measuring our own journey against someone else's highlight reel instead of focusing on our unique path. Comparison creates a distorted perception of reality because we rarely see the struggles, setbacks, and failures that others experience behind the scenes. We see only what they choose to show or what seems impressive, and we use it as a benchmark for our own worth. This habit breeds self-doubt, envy, and a sense of inadequacy. Even when we achieve meaningful progress, it can feel insufficient simply because someone else appears to be ahead. Comparing ourselves to others shifts our attention outward, diverting energy from our goals toward judgments and evaluations that are largely irrelevant. The trap of comparison often leads to a constant cycle of striving to match or surpass others, which can create exhaustion and burnout. Instead of making decisions based on personal values and objectives, we begin making choices to compete with or impress others. This approach erodes intrinsic motivation, as actions are no longer driven by internal purpose, but by external reference points that are constantly changing. Progress slows because our focus is scattered, our energy fragmented, and our confidence undermined. One of the subtle dangers of comparison is that it masks our unique strengths and talents. Every individual has a combination of skills, experiences, and perspectives that cannot be duplicated. When we measure ourselves against someone else's path, we often overlook or undervalue our own potential. We fail to recognize that our progress is not meant to mirror anyone else's. It is meant to reflect our growth, our learning, and our journey toward our personal goals. Learning to resist the comparison trap requires a deliberate shift in perspective. It begins with acknowledging that everyone's path is different, that circumstances, opportunities, and timing vary, and that success is relative. Someone else's achievements do not diminish our capacity to succeed. They simply follow a different timeline and context. By focusing on our own trajectory, we can measure growth in meaningful terms, the skills we are developing, the challenges we are overcoming, and the goals we are achieving on our own path. Comparison also limits experimentation and creativity. When we constantly look to others as the standard, we may avoid trying new approaches or taking risks that don't align with what is already deemed successful. We unconsciously conform to what has worked for others rather than exploring solutions that are uniquely suited to our circumstances and vision. True progress comes from cultivating self-awareness, setting personal benchmarks, and evaluating success by our own standards. It comes from appreciating small wins, acknowledging incremental growth, and staying committed to long-term objectives without being distracted by the noise of others' achievements. By breaking free from the comparison trap, we gain clarity, focus, and confidence. We can dedicate energy to actions that genuinely move us forward, rather than wasting it on measuring us against irrelevant points of reference. This mindset shift transforms obstacles into opportunities for learning, allows us to pursue innovation without fear of judgment, and strengthens resilience because our sense of worth becomes anchored in personal growth rather than external metrics. Progress becomes sustainable because it is rooted in internal validation, purpose, and self-directed action. The moment we stop comparing, we reclaim our attention, preserve our energy, and give ourselves permission to define success on our own terms. Comparison is a subtle but powerful trap, but it can be overcome with awareness, discipline, and the deliberate choice to focus on personal growth, learning, and the journey that is uniquely ours. Neglecting the power of patience is one of the most overlooked traps that silently sabotages progress. In a world driven by instant gratification, quick results, and immediate feedback, patience can feel counterintuitive. We live in an era where information, opportunities, and even recognition appear almost instantaneously, and this conditions us to expect results at the same speed. The danger is that when outcomes are not immediate, we often misinterpret the delay as failure or inadequacy, causing frustration, rushed decisions, or the abandonment of long-term goals. True progress, however, rarely unfolds overnight, is cultivated through steady, repeated action, sustained effort, and the commitment to a process whose rewards are often invisible in the moment. Patience is not passivity, it is an active engagement with the journey. It allows us to focus on consistent improvement rather than being distracted by immediate results or external pressures. People who neglect patience tend to chase shortcuts, skip steps, or overextend themselves, believing that speed equals success. This approach often backfires because it sacrifices depth, mastery, and resilience for temporary gains. Without patience, small incremental wins can be undervalued, yet these very wins compound over time to produce significant results. The process of growth is rarely linear and progress may appear slow or uneven, but consistent effort, repeated over days, months, and years, leads to outcomes that are far greater than any immediate gratification could provide. Patience is also critical in building the resilience needed to navigate setbacks. Every journey encounters obstacles, delays, and moments of uncertainty. Those who lack patience are more likely to become discouraged, abandon their goals, or make impulsive decisions that derail progress. Those who cultivate patience, on the other hand, understand that setbacks are part of the process and that persistence in the face of delay or difficulty strengthens skill, character, and judgment. Another aspect of patience is understanding the compounding effect of effort over time. Small, consistent actions may seem inconsequential day by day, but over weeks, months, and years, they accumulate into substantial achievements. Neglecting patience causes us to underestimate this compounding effect, leading to impatience and premature judgment of our progress. People who master patience develop a long-term perspective. They are able to tolerate uncertainty, delay gratification, and focus on actions that matter, even if results are not immediate. This long-term focus enables wiser decisions, deeper learning, and the ability to build systems and habits that sustain progress over time. Impatience, by contrast, often results in reactive choices, chasing trends or abandoning strategies before they've had a chance to produce meaningful results. Cultivating patience requires deliberate awareness and practice. It begins with recognizing the natural rhythm of growth, accepting that mastery and meaningful achievement take time, and embracing the process rather than fixating solely on outcomes. Patience allows us to act with discipline, to follow through consistently, and to maintain motivation when visible results are delayed. It also fosters a sense of confidence because we learn to trust our efforts and the process rather than relying solely on external validation or instant success. By embracing patience, we develop a mindset that values sustainable progress, continuous learning, and steady momentum. We recognize that meaningful achievements are rarely instantaneous, and that the journey itself, marked by consistent effort, adaptation, and perseverance, is where true growth occurs. Neglecting patience is a trap because it tempts us to abandon this journey too early, to underestimate the power of compounding effort, and to settle for shallow or fleeting results. By intentionally practicing patience, we align our actions with long-term goals, strengthen our resilience, and create the conditions for progress that is not only measurable, but enduring and deeply rewarding. Progress is not about speed, luck, or simply working harder. It is about awareness, intention, and the choices we make every day. Each of the traps we've discussed, chasing approval instead of purpose, avoiding failure, overcomplicating the process, comparing ourselves to others, and neglecting patience, represents a subtle force that can quietly derail even the most determined efforts. The key to meaningful progress is not in avoiding challenges altogether, but in recognizing these traps, understanding their impact, and consciously choosing a different path. When we act from purpose rather than approval, embrace failure as a teacher, simplify our approach, focus on our own journey, and cultivate patience, we create a foundation that is resilient, sustainable, and aligned with our true goals. These principles do not just accelerate results, they transform the way we engage with our work, our growth, and our lives. Progress becomes not a fleeting pursuit, but a steady, meaningful journey where effort compounds, learning deepens, and accomplishments reflect our values and vision. By avoiding these traps, we reclaim control over our path, act with clarity and courage, and move forward with momentum that is enduring. The choice is ours to swayed by distractions, fears, and comparisons, or to rise above them and progress with intention, confidence, and purpose. True growth comes to those who recognize the traps and deliberately step into the behaviors, mindsets, and habits that fuel forward motion.